local grievances that may be addressed another way. And we're talking about people who are ideologically committed to violent extremism in a perverted view of what is a great faith, the Islamic faith. And it's detaching those people who are not violently committed to the ideology that we're talking about here. If we can detach the others and then persuade them that they should be part of the democratic process, that they renounce violence, and that there is a future for them only as part of the democratic process, that I think is what President Karzai is talking about. And so when we talk loosely about the Taliban, we're talking about people who sometimes are associated with them, but have got no ideological long-term desire to be part of that, and we are trying to detach them away. That's the point.
But for the moment, military commanders on the ground are talking about months of fighting to try to turn the tide in this war. Julie Cobb, you have a question. I believe you're very much involved in the consequences of this war.
Yeah, I'm a student teacher and I work in a school near RAF Lynham, and obviously we experience the repatriations fairly frequently. Sometimes they happen every day. And the children that I teach, I always say to them, make sure you pay your respects as you're walking through the town. And they are asking me constantly, why is this happening? Why are these soldiers being killed? Why do they, why does this have to happen to us? Can't we come back? And you don't have to see the looks on their faces every single day like I have to. So, Mr. Brown, I basically want to know, why can't we just pull out now?
First of all, I want to say that the soldiers and the families, we owe them a huge debt of gratitude. We've got brave, courageous, dedicated professional people risking their lives, and in some cases losing their lives in Afghanistan. But the reason, and I've got to think of why we're in Afghanistan every time I see that, or write to a family where there's been a bereavement, or hear of someone who's been very badly injured in Afghanistan. And you've got to ask yourself the question all the time, is this the right thing for a country like ours to do? And my answer has got to be yes, because the security of our country and every country depends on our ability to deal with a terrorist threat. And we know that the terrorist threat is on the Afghan-Pakistan border, where Al-Qaeda have been very strong. And we know over the last 10 years about 3/4 of terrorist plots have started not in London or in the rest of Europe, but started from the Pakistan border areas. And the best way to protect ourselves against that security threat is to make sure that Al-Qaeda is weakened and that the Taliban don't return to power in Afghanistan. So it is about the security of the young children that you're talking about. And it is a far distance away, but the security and protection of them and our country begins by dealing with the threat that exists in Pakistan and Afghanistan.
Yeah, I appreciate that, but I just think it will have a long-term effect on their education and their well-being, because you can tell at school, and I can tell every single day, how they are coping, especially those ones whose families are out in Afghanistan and they don't know if they're going to see their mums or their dads again. So I think long-term, it will affect them.
Edmund Nicholson, Edmund Nicholson, London School of Economics.
Prime Minister, I do understand that we have to have a clear strategy, and I'm wondering, you have offered a long-term commitment to Afghanistan from Britain, but what are the terms of that commitment? What does that commitment really mean for this country in the long term?
It means that we want to train up Afghan police and army so that they are in a position to take over from us in protecting the security of the country. At the moment, there are about 90,000 Afghan police. At the moment, there's about 90,000 Afghan army. We will raise, with President Karzai, the number of Afghan armed forces to about 175,000 in the next year or so, by 2011. We'll raise the number of police, so there'll be about 300,000 police and armed forces. At that point, Afghan forces are more able to take security control of their country, and our forces, which are 10,000, 9,500 plus some others in Afghanistan, these numbers can start to come down. So it's not a plan for protecting the status quo, it's a plan for growing the Afghan forces so they can take security control of their country gradually, and we can reduce our forces over time.
Mr. Karzai, do you think that the British and other NATO armies are trying to get out too quickly? You said it will take at least 5 years before your security forces are ready.
5 years in stages. We will be trying our very best to be ready to defend a greater part of our country from 2 to 3 years. And when we reach the 5-year end line, that's where we will be leading most of the operation. There still will be the need for international forces, there still will be the need for financial support of Afghanistan, there still will be a lot more to accomplish on our own and with the international community. So this is for us to take leadership of the security operations as we reach 5 years from today.
So, Mr. Brown, the polls overwhelmingly show that a huge majority of British people want the troops to be pulled out soon. And when we're expecting more bloody months where there's going to be more casualties, what are you going to say to the British public? And you're going to be in an election year.
We have lost 100 or more people in the last year. We've lost these people because of the tactics that are being used by the Taliban. It's using explosive devices to try and destroy the lives of British forces. So they cannot beat us face to face. They cannot beat us in open conflict.
But what will you say to the British public?
And we have got to deal with this guerrilla warfare, with the new tactics that we're carrying out. What I say to the British public is that when we focus on the reasons why we've had to go in there, and we focus on our plan for making the Afghans responsible for the security over time, then people do understand that there's a reason for being there, and there's also a way forward that is based on a clear strategy and a clear plan for the future.
And another question I'm formulating. I understand you've just finished your MSc in Kingston. You're just about to start your PhD. Your question?
My question is to President. Mr. President, what are you going to do about corruption?
Prime Minister has actually described your government as a byword for corruption.
Well, we have very good relations, ma'am. On corruption, on corruption, we have been working very hard. We simply do not publicize all that we have done for the last 3 years and what we are doing every day. Tomorrow in the London conference, I'll be announcing a plan for a renewed, invigorated anti-corruption activity through a high office of corruption, with more powers to them, with more deadlines that we are imposing on ourselves in order to handle corruption more effectively. That means laws, procedures, regulations, people's contact with the government, the delivery of services, and a plethora of things.
Just because, for example, I understand that Britain's Foreign Secretary David Miliband has said he raised with you the recent reappointment of General Abdul Rashid Dostum as your Chief of Staff, and Mr. Miliband said that was an issue of concern for him. Mr. Brown, is that the kind of warlords and cronies you said in public you didn't want to see in the government?
I think it's very important that we take every action that is necessary where corruption is found. Where
are those actions being taken?
Where allegations are made, that the purpose of these new arrangements is to investigate them. Laws have got to be stronger and penalties harsher.
General Dostum was a presidential candidate in 2004 election, and he won 1 million votes. 1 million Afghans voted for him. So we must consider an environment in the reality in which we work with, not separate from it. In Afghanistan, in order to keep the country safe and move it forward to a better future, we have to work through the availability of politics there. After all, they say, what is that? Politics is the art of possible, or what?
Prime Minister, Mr. President, you're going to have to work together on these challenges, but you've had a difficult relationship. Prime Minister, you've spoken in public about, in very strong language, about the Afghan government. Mr. President, you have said that you have sometimes found Mr. Brown's comments, one time you said superficial and unfortunate, and very insulting. What do you say to him now?
That was not on Prime Minister Brown's comments. That was.
But he has had strong words, strong criticism.
No.
What do you say to him now?
That was about the past year and a half, both the British and American government's general attitude towards Afghanistan that I criticized.
What do you say to
Prime Minister Gordon Brown, I have found to be an extremely distinguished person, a kind person with whom I have excellent working relations, but I'm proud to have his friendship.
You don't mind when he criticizes you in public?
No, he can do it right now.
Okay, Mr. Prime Minister?
I have actually a very good relationship with President Karzai, and we can talk frankly about the problems that a country faces when it's been through years of turmoil.